27. I walked out of my apartment, stopped, and inhaled deeply. You could smell the coming of winter. I smiled to myself. 1965 had the outlook of being a beautiful year, I thought. If we got married before Christmas, we could spend the rest of the winter on the West Coast. The first part of next year, I'd go into the business and the show business. There was no doubt in my mind any longer as to whether I could make out. It was just a matter of playing for bigger stakes. My car was kind of slow starting, and I decided I'd have it checked the first chance I got. I drove slowly uptown. Janet would be waiting for me at her apartment. It was one of those days when I believed that I had the world in my back pocket. I parked in front of a hotel and smiled condescendingly at the doorman. He smiled politely and held the door open. This was something I was getting used to, and it was really sweet. The bell captain smiled and nodded politely at me. I was getting to be known by sight from all the times I'd come in with Janet. The thick carpet sank under my feet as I crossed the lobby and entered the elevator. I rode up to her expensive suite, my head in the clouds. My brief knock was answered immediately. When I stepped into the large apartment, I froze instantly. There were 2 white men standing there, and police was written all across their faces. Janet closed the door slowly behind me. "Here's Mr. Jones now," she said in a low voice. I looked at her, and there was shock written all across her face. The first thing that flashed across my mind was that she had found out where I'd gotten the 20,000 big ones at. How the hell had Stella found out so quick where I'd gone? I cursed silently. I'd have to play it by ear until I found out how much they knew. "Whoreson," she blurted out, "they want you on another pandering case." Tears welled up in her eyes. At the mention of another, both policemen glanced quickly at each other. "It's not pandering we want you for, Mr. Jones," one of the well-dressed young men said. He flashed his badge at me. "We're federal officers, and we want you for transporting prostitutes across the state line." I was stunned. For a minute, I couldn't believe what they were saying. I grinned. I knew they had me wrong. I hadn't brought any horse here but Boots. Boots! The name exploded in my mind. What had that bitch done to me? The smile slowly disappeared as I was beginning to get a glimmer of what had happened. "We have the statement of a young lady who says you brought her here with you from Detroit. Is that correct?" the younger of the 2 asked. I could only nod my head. "I just gave her a ride, that's all," I said, more for Janet's benefit than for any other reason. She was staring at me in horror. She put her hand over her mouth to hold back a sob. "Oh, Whoreson. Whoreson, why? You didn't need the money!" She screamed and ran towards her bedroom. "God damn!" I cursed. The bitch believed me guilty already. She hadn't even bothered to ask me if it was true or not. "You better come downtown with us, Mr. Jones," one of the officers said. "I must advise you that anything you say now may be used against you." I turned silently and followed them to the door. "Janet!" I yelled back across my shoulder. "Call me up a lawyer, baby. At least wait until you know what's really happening before falling apart on me." It was a sickening ride downtown. I sat in the back seat and remained silent. When we got to the federal building, the 2 officers put me between them and led me inside. They took me somewhere on the 3rd floor and put me in an office. I sat there for about 10 minutes until a fat, round-faced white man came in. He smiled at me. "My name is Mr. Lobdell, Mr. Jones, and I'm the man assigned to your case. Before you say anything, I want you to know that whatever you say might be held against you." He sat down. "Now that we got that bullshit done with, we can get down to business." He lit a cigarette and offered me one. "I guess you know we have got you by your balls." "I don't know a goddamn thing," I snarled angrily. "You got some kind of fucking statement by some silly-ass bitch, and you think I'm supposed to confess?" I glared at him. "You can take that statement and shove it up that bitch's ass for all I care." The smile came off his face. His eyes glittered dangerously. "Well, Now that we understand each other a little better, Whoreson," he dragged the name out, "we can lay all the cards on the table. I not only have you by the balls, boy, but if you give me any bullshit, I will personally see that we rack your ass up." "Screw you and that bitch," I replied hotly. I didn't give a damn what he said. I wasn't planning on copping out. He took another approach. "You seem like a pretty bright kid, son, so let's look at what you're up against. First of all, we do have the lady's statement. Now, I'll admit you could fight it, but here's what kills your shit. We got your record, boy, and we know for a fact that this woman was your whore. You went to prison in 1957. After doing 6 years and 3 months, you were released." He smiled at me coldly. "How do you think a jury will react when they find out that the same woman who went to prison with you as your rap partner is now pressing charges on you for the Mann Act? Do you really believe they'll find you innocent?" I stared at him, too shocked to speak up until now. I'd still believed I would be able to walk out of here and return to my bright future. His last words had brought my small world tumbling down around my head. He stared at me for a few seconds, then dropped the crusher on me. "Don't think this is your only problem. It seems as if this young lady really wants your ass." I stared at him in surprise. I couldn't think of anything else she could do. She didn't know anything about the 20 grand I'd ripped off, thank God. "She happens to be pressing pandering charges against you with the state of New York. You could get 10 to 15 for that alone, not counting the time we're going to give you." I slumped down in the chair. I felt as though someone had beaten me with an iron pipe. If you have ever been in a fight and it continued until you couldn't hold up your arms, you have an idea of what I'm talking about. I just wanted to lie down somewhere. I couldn't even think any longer. I stared at the officer, defeated. I knew I was finished. If I got time from the state, then got sentenced by the government, they could run the time wild. What I mean by that is, after you finish doing 10 years for the state, the feds will be waiting for you. They will pick you up at one prison and transport you right back to another one to start the second sentence. I guess you realize that, if we want to, we can run you 2 sentences wild," he said. I could hear his voice coming to me as though we were miles apart. "We don't want to give you the short end of the stick, though, Mr. Jones. I've already talked to the detectives on your case, and they have agreed to drop the charges against you if you will plead guilty to the federal charge." I came awake then, as if someone had poured cold water on me. In the past 10 minutes, I had accepted the fact that I was going to prison. Now we were bargaining on how many years of my life I would have to spend there. "How much time would I get if I pleaded guilty?" I asked, hoarsely. He tapped his fingers on the edge of his desk, watching me closely. "I can almost promise you, off the record of course, that you won't get over 5 years in prison." I smiled for the first time since entering his office. 5 years wasn't too bad. I'd still be in my 20s when I got out. Even if I had to do all 5, it would be damn near 1970 by the time I got out. But that was better than a lot of people I knew. There were some men who would never get out. "You just made yourself a deal, Mr. Lopdell," I said, as I leaned across the desk and shook his hand.